Welcome, everyone. Whether you're joining us live or you're catching the replay, we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for spending a little time with us today. We're diving into something that's becoming a bigger part of conversations in the healthy building space, particularly when it comes to meeting requirements for building certifications. And that's how project teams are incorporating sensor data to meet WELL certification requirements. Now, if you've ever found yourself kind of coordinating with performance testing agents, comparing quotes, working out logistics, and thinking, there maybe has to be slightly less complex or more scalable way to do this, then you're definitely in the right spot. We'll be digging into how sensor-based pathways can not only simplify this process, but also save time, reduce costs, and give you way more transparency throughout your project's entire lifecycle. If we haven't met before, my name is Joe. I'm on the team here at Kytera, and we work closely with WELL project teams around the world to support indoor air quality strategies. And today's session is one that we've been talking about for what seems like a really long time here at the office, and we're especially excited to share this one with you today. We're thrilled to be co-hosting this session with Jennifer Berthelot-Jelovic, WELL faculty, award-winning WELL AP, and someone who's worked hands-on with clients across dozens of WELL projects. You're in for a real treat today. Jen's bringing examples, lessons learned, and all the things you wish you knew before starting a sensor-based project. So before we dive in, I actually want to hear from you. So I'm going to be launching a quick poll here just to get things started. And this is really easy. So are you currently incorporating sensor data into your WELL projects? So yes, no, maybe plan to. So let's hear where you're at. Maybe you're the seasoned WELL AP, you've already made the switch, or you're just getting started and you're curious about the details. Let us know in the poll. We'd love to get a sense of, just who's in the room, so Jen and Liam can kind of tailor things as we go. And thank you so much. A couple dozen of responses already. It looks like we're kind of split between yes and maybe I plan to. Which is good to see. So a lot of you are already incorporating this. The session is going to be great to you to for you to go kind of into the weeds, into really the specifics. And even if you're on the no side and you're planning to, as you can see here, 19 and 35%, this session might actually be really eye-opening and helpful for you. So you should see those results popping up on your screen there. But either way, this isn't going to be one of those theory-only webinars. We're keeping it really tactical today. We're going to walk through real-world data, cost comparisons, layout guidance to help you feel more confident using sensors as the primary pathway. And of course, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So, at the end. So if something sparks your curiosity or if you have a specific scenario in mind, don't be shy. Please drop questions at any point during the conversation. We'll circle back to them at the end. And there's also a really informative resource we'll be sharing just before Q&A. So be sure to stick around so you can have a chance to download that. And we know things come up, so don't worry if you do have to hop early. We'll be sending the recording afterwards so you don't miss a single detail. I briefly mentioned this already, but just for those of you unfamiliar with Kytera, a little primer. We produce a suite of air quality monitoring and management solutions, helping organizations across the globe create world-class healthy workplaces, optimize for building performance, or achieve healthy building certifications like WELL, but also LEED, Fitwel, and Reset, among others. And you can see up here on the slide, what you may not know about us is that we work on a lot of WELL projects, over 200 globally. With that said, if you're a WELL AP, if you're a consultant, you're part of a project team that's working towards certification, this session is especially for you. But even if you're just curious about sensor approaches and how they compare to traditional performance testing, you're going to find this really insightful. So joining us today is Liam Bates. He's Kytera's founder and CEO, WELL faculty member, and longtime advocate for smarter, healthier buildings. He's really going to set the stage with a quick look at the latest sensor strategies and tools available and how teams are using continuous monitoring to navigate WELL requirements. And then we're going to hand things over to Jen. She's CEO and founder of A Sustainable Production and WELL faculty. If you're in the WELL space, which I imagine most of you on this call are, you've likely heard her name before. She's an award-winning WELL AP, one of the most experienced in the industry, and has led more than 100 WELL projects across multiple sectors. Jen's deeply trusted in this community and brings a ton of real-world perspective. And today, she's really going to walk us through how teams are actually applying these strategies in the field, including real project data, cost-saving examples, and lessons learned. So lots to cover today. We'll get started just after these quick housekeeping rules. So the webinar's live, it's going to be recorded. You're going to get that recording as soon as it's ready by email. The session will last approximately 40 minutes with Jen and Liam answering any questions in the remaining time. Send in your questions at any time via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll collect them and answer them during that Q&A portion. And during today's webinar, we're covering several topics, which you can see listed out here on the screen. And with that said, I'd like to finally pass things over to Liam to officially kick things off. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. And Liam, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And great to see so many people on the call today. This is a topic that I'm really excited about, and really excited to hear from Jen in a little bit about her experience and how she's thinking about this. I'll start off by just setting the stage a little bit here. Jumping into the different verification pathways that exist for both air and thermal comfort within the well building standard. But first of all, let's just take kind of a step backwards, and I want to share a little bit about how the way we think about health in buildings has changed over the years. We started, well, to be honest, we started a long time ago in an era where nobody thought about health at all. This was not a consideration. Buildings were really just, is this a roof over my head that is preventing water from getting in and keeping us relatively warm? This was maybe a few thousand years ago. But as we've started to realize that actually our buildings can play a much more important role in the experience of the occupants, standards like LEED and WELL have brought performance into kind of a central role in the standard. So we started off with certifications being kind of an exercise in box ticking, right? Do I have a policy for such and such thing? And if you tick all the boxes to say that you have all the policies, then you're good. And this was, of course, driven by technology not being able to do a lot of things that it now can do. Now, over time, that's evolved. Performance verification and testing became an important part of standards like the well building standard. And that was a great thing and a huge improvement, because for the first time, we were really looking at outcomes and not just, am I doing the things that should lead to those outcomes? I think the stage that technology has helped us to evolve to today is that we can look further than kind of a single performance test or a single point in time, and actually understand the true performance of the building, the true impact on the health and well-being and comfort of occupants, not just at a single point in time now, but really over a much longer period of time during increases in temperature, decreases in temperature, increases in outdoor air pollution, all these different things, and truly understand the performance of the building and the impact on its people. So this webinar is talking a lot about performance testing, continuous monitoring, the differences between them. So what are we talking about at a most basic level? A performance test or a spot check is really a reading, as you see here on the left, essentially at a single point in time, in a single location. Of course, you can take multiple tests across a building, but really what you're looking at is somebody coming in with equipment. Sometimes this will be samples that get sent to a lab, and walking away saying, at this point in time, at this location in the building, this is what the air quality was. Continuous monitoring, on the other hand, is a continuous process. So you actually get data for 60 minutes per hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So I kind of think of this as a single image versus a video, right? You have a snapshot versus a much more sort of holistic long-term picture. Now, there are certain things that performance testing can do that continuous monitoring cannot do today. Understanding specific VOCs, certain chemicals that you might want to very specifically look at. And the only way to achieve this is through lab tests, for example. And so there's a place for both performance testing and continuous monitoring, as we'll get into in a moment. But this is kind of the high-level difference. Now, I know we have a lot of well APs on the call today, and maybe I'll start off by just kind of busting a myth, which is that installing air quality monitors or continuous monitors helps you meet one specific feature within the air concept in Well, and that would be feature A08 for installing air quality monitors. And so let's just go ahead and bust this myth, which is air quality monitors can do a lot more than simply giving you 1 or 2 points for having them installed. They can actually measure a wide number of parameters that can help you to meet various preconditions throughout the standard and provide a number of optimization points, including A01, which is the precondition for the air concept. And what this means is that sensors are now a viable pathway as an alternative to performance testing within the air and thermal comfort concepts, which means that you don't need to do performance testing if you go with sensors. So it's really a choice of either or. The reason I bring this up is because we still see a lot of projects that have, I believe, this misconception and are doing lots of performance testing for air and thermal comfort and spending a lot of money on it, and also installing air quality sensors to get an extra 2 points under A08. This, in my eyes, is a big waste because actually that data could be used to replace the need for performance testing, freeing up a lot more budget within air and thermal comfort. So let's jump into this in a little bit more detail. A01 is it's one of the preconditions for the air concept, and it's focused on meeting specific thresholds for a variety of air pollutants. And you can see here the different parts. So there's particulate matter, organic gases, inorganic gases, radon, and then there's annual measurement of these parameters. And for each of those, you can see that there are pathways that are either performance testing or sensor data. There's also letter of assurance for radon, but you can touch on that later. And so for all of the A01 concept, the key takeaway here, if you can walk away with one thing, for A01, you can choose to either go with performance testing or sensors. Now, how does this work and what has actually changed over the past couple years? Historically, all well projects had to do performance testing for air and thermal comfort. And the reason for this is originally there were not sensor pathways for all of those different parts to the concept or to the feature that I just shared. And the other thing was that the technology wasn't there. There simply were not sensors that could measure things like ozone, carbon monoxide to the standards that were required by the well building standard. And so that's kind of where this idea comes from, that even though I've installed sensors, I still need to do PV testing. However, that has changed. With updates in technology, and there's now several sensors that are able to measure a wider variety of parameters. Obviously, the example we have here is the SenseEdge Go, our device that's battery powered. And this is able to measure things like PM 2.5, TVOC, CO2, temperature, relative humidity, carbon monoxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, light levels, a wide variety of parameters. And these allow you, as you can see on this slide, to meet all of the features within and all of the parts within A01, but also a long list of other preconditions within the well standard and other optimization points. So there's a total of, this is specifically for the Kytera SenseEdge Go, there's a total of 3 preconditions and 9 optimization points that are available today by using this. And again, I think critically, within the air and thermal comfort concepts, this is able to take the place of that on-site performance testing. Of course, there's pros and cons to each of these 2 options, which we'll get into. But this is a really big change in, I think, both technology and the standard, and how when the 2 come together, it can make a real difference to your project and the budget of your project. So sensor dating, sensor data and using continuous monitors might sound great. I'll get into some of the other benefits outside of just well certification later on. But there's probably a lot of questions, and these are some of the questions that often come up. Are sensors more expensive than doing on-site testing? How do the costs compare? How should I think about this from an ROI perspective? Am I actually able to earn those points? And how complex is it to get these things set up and so on. And so with that, I thought there's nobody better to get into this and share her experience than Jen. So maybe we'll hand it over to you. And yeah, go for it.
Thanks. First, I just want to thank you for having me today and everyone for joining us. It's really fun to see so many friends, clients, and partners from all over the world joining us today. So thank you for being here. And before I get started, I just want to share a little bit about why I'm here. In case you're wondering, no, I don't work for Kytera. I don't consult to Kytera. I don't get paid by them. But we've actually consulted to numerous sensor companies over recent years, and Kytera was not one of them. That being said, we do see Kytera as a vital partner to support our clients. And I was thinking back, I don't even know when they came on my radar, maybe in the last 6 months or so. I don't even know. But honestly, I had seen Liam post on LinkedIn and I was just enamored, completely enamored with what he was sharing, the data, the research, the solutions. And so go ahead, next slide. One of the first things I think that I was really excited about was the cost of when I started looking at sensors versus PV testing. ASAP has worked on probably 4,500 plus well projects globally in the past 13 years. We have a lot of portfolios. And if that math doesn't math, it's because I started working with well in 2012 before it was released to the public. So we've had clients who've achieved well platinum on numerous projects and chosen not to renew their certifications because they didn't want to pay for the annual ongoing PV testing fees, which honestly breaks my heart to see projects that have worked so hard and achieved such impressive milestones, and then they abandon it due to those ongoing costs. So when I discovered that sensors could be a solution for this obstacle, honestly, I was just completely elated. But it's not just the testing cost of hiring a third-party PV testing agency or organization. The travel costs, especially if you're in an emerging market or a region where there are no testing agents, which there's still a lot of those around the world. But there's also almost always unknown fees for retesting as well that we can't include in that upfront cost. So you almost need to keep a contingency for retesting. And then there's the logistics of coordinating the testing, right? So when is the project going to be ready versus when is the PTA available to be on site? We had a client once where we had coordinated all of this. The PTA came to site and they were literally painting the stairwells with the most toxic paint, and we knew exactly why we were going to fail and have to retest that location, right? No matter how much coordination, someone wears the perfume the day you're testing, whatever it is, right? So do we have to get the PTA access to the building? Do they need security clearance, right? All of those things sometimes can take a lot of time, a lot of effort on the part of the client. Some of our developers actually lose access to the space the moment they turn it over to their tenants. We see this a lot of in lab science spaces, life science spaces, et cetera. So being able to use sensors ongoingly rather than trying to get access to the tenant space can also remove a lot of obstacles for developers and building owners and operators once that building has been leased or tenants have moved in. Last is the disruption that can be caused from the testing, right? And not that testing agents are coming in and loud and making, it's just that sometimes you fail a test. You have to implement the curative action so that you can retest. Now you're scheduling that retesting. And we just talked about some of those logistical issues. And then how does all of that impact your project timeline for submission? Are you holding that up, waiting for labs to come back, waiting to retest, then waiting for those labs to come back again? Next slide. So I want to stop here for a minute before I address the benefits of continuous monitoring. I know we have some PV testing agents on. I've seen that, and I'm sure some of you will be watching it back. One of the things that I have loved most about Well is, in fact, the PV testing. I think that it provides rigor. It provides that third-party verification at a whole other level that we haven't seen in a lot of other certifications. And one of the things we talked about early on with Well is that it keeps you from saying that you built to the Well standard, right? Because if you haven't verified it through testing or data, you can't make that claim, which I loved. And we've worked with some really fantastic testing agents through the years that we love all over the world. They've been incredibly important partners on the journey with us, and they'll continue to be a vital part of the team, even as we're implementing sensors. There are many features that sensors currently still can't test for. Water is a perfect example for that. Additionally, we're working with testing agents to help them become more involved with the sensor side of things as well. We see that their partnership with the testing that they'll be doing still is a fantastic opportunity for them to support with the sensors on many levels. So I don't want you to be left with the fact that I don't support PV testing or I think that it's not important. But if you know me or you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I'm always looking for ways to improve the process for my clients. And this means saving them money, making the process easier, and helping them exceed their goals in the most efficient ways possible. And for me, sensors honestly have just been the perfect example of just that. As Liam mentioned, PV testing represents 1 to maybe a few days in time, right? Depending on how big your project is. And some sensors represent 365 days in a year of data. So this means that people are able to adjust to issues in real time that might not have presented themselves during that 1 day or a few days during the testing period. And that's really going to lead to improved outcomes and better occupant well-being, which is really the whole point in doing a certification, right? As Liam said, not checking the boxes or adding points to a scorecard, but really improving outcomes and better occupant well-being. So additionally, if there's an air quality event, like a wildfire, I'm here in Los Angeles, had left Australia the day before wildfires broke out there in 2019. Sensors will really be able to tell occupants in real time that it's safe for people to come into the places where they live, work, learn, and play. And maybe their homes aren't as efficient because they don't have the same, HVAC systems, filtration, et cetera. And sensors are incredibly efficient, right? You can install sensors yourself if you choose to, so nobody has to come out. The SenseEdge Go, which I think might have been on a previous slide, it happens to be my personal favorite. And the reason for that is because it's wireless. Literally, it can just be stuck on the wall, and that's really important. But of course, like it needs to go in the right location, right? At the right height. And what I love is that Kytera actually supports their clients with this placement. And I also see this as another area where the PV testing agents can support the sensors by helping install them and verifying they're where they're meant to be while they're already on site doing the testing that needs to be done for water or other features that the sensors don't currently test for. So this can reduce travel, the workplace disruptions we've talked about, and then again, delays in submission, waiting for labs, reports, etc. I have to admit, the most exciting part for me is the cost savings. When we add up the costs for testing, travel, retesting, annual testing, compared to that one-time purchase of sensors, the recalibration, and the annual licensing fees for customer support, honestly, I've just been blown away by how much our clients can save. It's just made sensors a no-brainer for me, which is why I can't stop talking and posting about them. I do feel like I'm like out there as a sensor advocate right now, but I feel like I'd be doing my clients and the industry a disservice if I didn't share this phenomenal solution. I will share some of this analysis and breakdown of costs shortly as we get further along. Next slide. So as I've mentioned, there's numerous reasons why sensors are the smart solution for third-party verification. I know people see sensors as a tech upgrade, but it's really a lot more than that. They're a proactive, healthy strategy that can improve outcomes. And as I mentioned previously, they're incredibly easy to install, even in existing buildings. And that's really important for me and for our clients, and for a few reasons. Some clients are in existing buildings, right? We know most of our building stock is existing, and they're not doing construction. So sensors can still be a viable option for them. We've had conversations with clients who are done with design or mid-construction when they learn about sensors. And because things like the SenseEdge Go are wireless, this means that the sensor can be used in a solution, and they don't need things like a power, outlet or conduit run. And that's incredibly important for those clients. I think sensors can also be a great solution for portfolios that are participating in well at scale, and we work with a lot of those. It helps them earn numerous preconditions and points for their portfolio year after year without actually having to do any testing, right? So it's still increasing their well at scale score, helping them benchmark, maybe helping them with their ESG or GRESB or any of those reporting mechanisms they might be doing. And I think the real-time insights really just allow for real-time interventions when issues arrive. Also, and I know that Liam's going to get into this a little bit more, but I love the platform Kytera has created, and then the support that they provide to help users identify issues so that they can implement their curative actions. Kytera really takes a lot of the work out of the end user's hands and does the heavy lifting for them, which as a consultant, I love because I spend a lot of time on PV testing, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. So now we're going to get into, I think, what a lot of you are excited about. Next slide. So I promised we'd get into the cost analysis and some case studies. So this is our first one. Don't try to break this down, but I wanted to be transparent and show you that a lot of time and effort has gone into really analyzing, feature part by feature part concepts. This does include more than just what is able to be done in the sensors. And the reason for that is often just based on how we get our PV testing proposals back and the way we're able to break that out. So I also think it's important that you get to see the full testing and sensors together, so you're getting a real idea of what that cost is for the client. This is Global Wave Integration. It's a 4,000 square foot office and showroom. And it's an example of our smallest project, which not only is close to achieving WELL V2 Platinum certification. We're in our final review, submitting those review comments, and I feel very confident that we'll be able to submit those and achieve Platinum. But they've already also achieved their WELL performance rating due to the use of sensors. And I often hear people say, my space is too small for WELL certification. And I think that Global Wave is the perfect case study of why that isn't true. We've done ratings and certifications for probably at least a dozen, if not more, projects that are under 10,000 square feet, whether it's showrooms, community spaces, and a lot of those, most of them are actually platinum. I think there might be a gold sprinkled in there somewhere. But Global Wave started their project in 2020 before sensors were approved to replace PV testing. So I think this is another benefit of this case study is that they implemented the sensors late in the process. They didn't come into this saying, we're going to do the performance rating. We actually added the performance rating as we got further along and realized it also didn't exist in 2020. But we also realized, hey, with the sensors and everything we're doing, and because of Global Wave's business, that we could do all of this. But they did do a full suite of PV testing before installing their sensors. And so this analysis includes points like LO31 and SO21, and in transparency, failed PV testing for SO41, right? But because we did use sensors, we were actually able to go after other points we might and achieve points we might not have. So it was okay that we might not have passed in every single feature. So the numbers in the precondition optimization might not align with what you see in the table. And that's because there are some things that just aren't broken down in here. So I'm going to break this down on the next slide to make it much more digestible so you actually see those benefits. So in year one alone, the sensors have paid for the sensors and the testing, right? They're still doing the water testing. There's still some testing that needs to be done in other concepts that the sensors aren't going to fulfill. So they're saving $2,700 in year one. They're earning 2 extra preconditions and up to 8 extra points here. Now you can earn up to 9, but they were already doing one of those with the testing they had chosen. So those points really help them achieve the performance rating and getting to that platinum threshold. They did achieve an innovation point for the sensors measuring the PM1 threshold as well. So if you look at over the 4 years, you can see the total savings is about $20,000. And then their total cost for testing and sensors over 4 years would be less than $19,000, with the bulk of that being in year one when they purchase the sensors and have to do the most on-site testing. Next slide. So this case study is a 20,000 square foot building, and I chose this one because we actually get a lot of projects around this size, so I thought it was important to include this case study. This project was only looking to achieve preconditions through testing. They were not looking to do any optimizations. They were on a tight budget, which honestly we find trends to be the case on projects this size. Again, I'm not going to break this down into I don't want you to look at this. I'll break it down into more digestible data on the next slide, but I wanted you to be able to see this due diligence and how much time we spend on this for transparency's sake. Also, the numbers we're using for the various PV testing cases, I just want you to know, includes fees from a few different PV testing agents and orgs. So we were able to kind of look at that, and they're not always the same. Sometimes we have family and friends discounts for using the same people over and over. So we really wanted to make sure we were using an analysis that included numerous PV testing agents. So on this slide, you're going to see that by combining the PV testing with sensors, they're able to achieve up to 9 extra points, right? Because they weren't going after any of those optimizations. So they wouldn't have achieved that just by doing the PV testing for their preconditions, which is almost an entire certification level, right? If they're at bronze, they're going to silver, silver, they're going to gold, platinum, you got 20, so you're halfway there. And in year one, they've saved about $3,500. And over 4 years, they've saved almost $20,000. So their total cost for 4 years of using sensors and testing comes out to just over $28,000. And again, when you're comparing that, to what year after year looks like when you're just doing testing, this is a phenomenal and significant savings, especially again on these smaller projects don't typically have economies of scale. And we know the testing agents really struggle with the pricing on these smaller projects as well. So my hope is that on some of these smaller projects, by including sensors and then having the testing agent, really focus on those other features, it will take some of that strain off of them, where they've often barely been breaking even or even possibly losing money because there's just not economies of scale on these smaller projects when it comes to the PV testing. Next slide. Okay, so this one does not have the larger in-depth, and the reason for this, I wanted to include a larger project, but we're still in the process of analyzing a lot of our larger projects, both for single-use assets and our portfolios who've committed or are still exploring using sensors. One of our clients just confirmed they'll be using, this for about 30 buildings, so that's really exciting. This project is in the initial stages of exploring the use of sensors, and they're based on the analysis. I can't imagine they'd say no. But we had to make some assumptions because we haven't asked the PV testing agents to provide annual testing costs for years 2 to 4 yet. Additionally, what we've learned from doing all this analysis and what might be helpful for ULAPs out there or even, end users is to actually ask the PV testing agents to provide proposals with cost breakouts for each of those features, not just a lump sum, because this allows us to do a fair and accurate comparison between PV testing and sensors. And it allows the clients to be able to choose which method they prefer, right? So they may look at it and say, oh, okay, well, wow, we should absolutely be using the sensors for these things and doing testing for these things. So for this case study, we used assumptions based on the size of the project and fees for other projects. So those PV testing numbers may not be exact in years 2 to 4. They are accurate for year 1. So again, what you're seeing is it gives you that estimated savings. This testing also included additional features we didn't see included on the previous projects like WO4, LO2, SO2, SO3. And these are features that the sensors can't currently measure for, but I'm hopeful in the future, maybe we'll see more features that the sensors can measure. I've been blown away by how quickly sensors have evolved in the last, year, the last 6 months. So I'm hoping to see them continue to evolve. So based on the assumptions for the square footage of this project, there's going to be a substantial savings after year 1 if they use sensors and testing. In year 1, you can see they pretty much break even. So even though we don't have those exact numbers for years 2 through 4 for the testing, I think it's still a compelling case because they're guaranteed to break even in year 1. So in those subsequent years, there'll be savings as the sensors have already been purchased and less testing will be required. Next slide. So I just want to summarize the important highlights again. IAQ sensor data doesn't just simplify things. It also opens up more point opportunities than performance testing due to cost, time, and access. As both Liam and I have mentioned, sensors provide up to 9 points in 2 concepts alone, which is really beneficial for our clients who might be trying to minimize their budget and only testing for preconditions when we know they would absolutely be passing many, if not all of these, 9 points in the optimizations. And these are features a lot of our users just don't want to pay for testing, unfortunately. So they end up exceeding their original goals and often go up a certification level when they choose sensors. As I mentioned, there's also, an innovation point for sensors, maybe even more innovations as sensors become more inclusive, or hopefully as we see them continue to evolve. And I think that sensors are a huge contributor in helping achieve the well performance rating, which is what we had seen with Global Wave's 4,000 square foot showroom and offices. Next slide. So ongoing data, it makes it easier to stay within the WELL's outlined IAQ thresholds. there's no guessing or hoping with that IAQ data, right? You know exactly how your projects are performing day to day. So there's going to be fewer surprises when we receive our performance review back. And as a consultant, I love that. And so do our clients, of course. Sensor data also gives you a year of evidence, right? Versus that snapshot in time with PV testing. So it means you already know where your project stands and you can minimize any risk of failure due to a single bad reading, like I mentioned with a stairwell where they were painting, or someone coming in wearing, you know, a lot or too much perfume or cologne. Which also eliminates reducing retesting and certification delays. One of the things I didn't mention, I think it was a little caveat at the bottom, all of those numbers in my case studies do not include any fees for retesting, because some of them we already know what those retesting fees have been. Yes, there's already been retesting fees for some of those projects, but we don't know what that is up front. So I didn't include them. So those are just baseline. So everything that is retesting fees is above and beyond savings, both in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sensor data helps you make adjustments and course correct before issues become a bigger problem, or in our case, a review comment. And if something's off, you'll know it right away. So you can address the issues before they affect your project compliance, or worse yet, the health of building occupants. And that's really why we're here, right? Is to improve the health of building occupants. And sensors, for me, just seem to be such an effective and efficient way to do so. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I love that sensors are more affordable for our clients. As I highlighted, you know, in those cost comparison case studies I shared with you, it's really disheartening for us to see clients give up their well certifications because of those ongoing costs. And any way we can mitigate that, we're really committed to finding those solutions. Again, you can earn more points in well for your clients. And without sensors, what we've really found is that you're going to spend the same amount of money, if not more, just to meet the preconditions, whereas those sensors are, you know, going to give you those data pathways where you can earn 9 points, if not 10, with the innovation. Money savings for my clients, super important. But I also love that there's way less work for consultants when using sensors, which allows us to focus on other areas of the project, like project management and documentation, which is really where I should be using my brain power and my team should be focusing. I don't know about the rest of you, well, APs on here, but I spend way more time than I would like, or can even charge my clients for, to coordinate and ensure that PV testing is successful before, during, and after testing, which, despite loving testing, I didn't know that I was going to have to almost become an expert in testing to be a well consultant, so that I could really guide and work with the testing agents. They are the experts. I am by no means an expert. I just play one on TV and really lean heavily on them. But I also need to understand it to best support, you know, our clients. There's so many aspects to well certification, right? There's so many areas to focus on. So why would I not let the data do the work for me? You know, letting IAQ vendors like Katerra own that process, and they can handle the heavy lifting on the data and submission side. So if you choose to work with a vendor like Katerra, you're really removing a lot of the manual, tedious administrative work from your plate and adding value elsewhere for your clients, or if you're the end user for yourself. There's just even certain things that we're not able to do for our clients that they have to pick up some of that tedious work on the testing side. So plain and simple, sensors just make recertification easier as well, which means better retention and long-term client relationships, right? If our clients decide not to renew their certifications, that may be a client that we then lose and we no longer get to have that relationship. And I am very much a relationship-driven person, and we're a relationship-driven company. So I don't like to lose those relationships. Sensors can reduce the high cost of testing and how this leads to projects choosing not to get recertified, right? So if sensors are in place, you already have that data. The investment has already been made, and it just streamlines recertification so clients are more likely to recertify. That's going to help improve client satisfaction. And like I said, if you're like me and customer service is your #1 driver, this is a monumental win. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Liam, and I look forward to your questions during the Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. And it's really wonderful to hear how this is actually making your life easier and making the lives of your clients easier, because that is 100% the goal here, And when designing both sensors and the software solutions around it, we're really coming at this from an angle of, like, we want the buildings of the future to be healthy and to create amazing environments for the people inside them, and just make that process to get there as low friction as possible, because we all want to get to that goal. We all want to have healthy buildings, healthy occupants, but there's a lot of hurdles along the way. So, it's really, that's where kind of a lot of our energy goes, is how can we reduce those hurdles. And so I'm really happy to hear that has been the experience. So I'll just try to run relatively quickly through a few best practices here. You might be thinking sensor data sounds great. There's a lot of benefits, but maybe there's a lot of open questions, right? Like, where should these sensors go? What's the right coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And that might feel overwhelming, and I get that. And so I just want to say that that's okay. You shouldn't have to worry about this or have to try to figure this out. And this is a comment to both the WELL APs out there, as well as any projects that are pursuing certification. You don't have to take this on. Vendors like Kytera are happy to do a lot of the heavy lifting here to try to actually make this process as easy, as frictionless as possible. So here are a few examples within Kytera of the steps that we go through to help projects, again, be it the APs or the end clients. Number one is mapping sensors to floor plans, making sure that we follow the guidelines of the certification to meet the density requirements, meet all the requirements for exactly which part of the room they should be in. Installation support to make sure that those sensors get installed easily, they get installed quickly, and they get online and start collecting data for your certification in as streamlined a fashion as possible. And then data compliance review. This is a really critical piece where we actually sit down together, look at the data and say, let's look at the WELL scorecard. What points are you going after? What are the thresholds that you need to meet? Where are you right now? Benchmark performance, identify any gaps, identify the root causes of those gaps. So is it an issue with, if your air is not meeting, is there a problem with some mechanical systems? Is there a policy that needs to change? And then actually make sure to get that data all into looking green and all the boxes being ticked and exactly where you want. And then actually helping with the submission of that data as well. So removing any of that kind of manual processing of spreadsheets. Like, you don't need to worry about that stuff. So there's some, and I'll just leave this up more in case anyone wants to take a quick screenshot. But these are some of the guidelines that we follow in order to make sure that we've got the right locations and the right density. We typically suggest having some buffer sensors, a few extra sensors above the minimum guidelines, just to make sure that in case you have something unexpected in a part of the building, you have enough sensors that are still compliant and passing while you go address those potential issues. But this is something that we work very closely with clients to help iron out together. There's a lot of nuance in sort of the placement guidelines, where exactly these sensors should go. I won't get into the weeds here, but if anyone's curious, we're happy to share this afterwards as well. And then really, once the sensors are there and collecting data, this is where the magic starts to happen. We can actually see a floor plan. So this is kind of an industry first, just showing us a quick example here from something that you can do within the Kytera data platform, which is see your floor plans, see over time how your air quality changes, both sort of across space and time, so that you can easily pinpoint hotspots, potential problems, tie that back to, again, policy changes, issues with mechanical equipment, sort of really anything else in the space that might be impacting air quality. And we found all sorts of interesting problems in buildings through these tools, and then help clients to go fix those issues and get to a sort of passing number in a healthier space. And then as Jen mentioned earlier, yeah, it's about reducing surprises and making sure once you have data from every single minute of every single day, you know exactly what is going on. If anything starts to deviate, you're able to see that, address it, and then ultimately submit. So you can check for each of those features. You can see on this slide, each of those features that you're targeting, you will see your compliance, whether or not you're passing. And when everything looks good, you can download the data, we output it in a report that follows the submission requirements that the IWI has. So you actually get all of the files pre-formatted for you, 100% ready for submission. So there's no manual Excel work to be done. There's no checking of compliance. There's no calculating 90th percentile of occupied hours, nothing like that. It's all done. Because again, we don't want people to waste their time doing this. It's not a good use of anyone's time to be reformatting Excels. So this lowers risk. It makes your life easier. Again, it lowers costs, especially a lot of those hidden costs. I think we focused a bit on, in Jen's presentation, there's focusing on sort of the obvious costs of performance testing. The reality is there's also a lot of hidden costs that we don't always take into account. Reformatting Excels is one of those. So at the end of the day, I believe that using sensor data is really kind of a no-brainer, in that it helps to make this a more streamlined process, reduce cost, reduce headaches, and have clarity into whether or not you are on track to pass, and if not, allow you to fix those problems before they actually become problems. I know we're coming up at time here, so I'm just going to spend the last 2 minutes running through a few use cases outside of well, because why are we using sensors? Why are we measuring air quality data? It's not to get a certification, right? It's to create a healthier space for our occupants. And a certification is a tool in that toolbox to help get there. The reality is that air quality data can be used throughout many different parts of your organization by many different stakeholders: real estate, your sustainability team, workplace, capital planning, facilities, and so on. Some examples, we see clients like LinkedIn who have sensors deployed across a large portion of their portfolio, measuring the air quality in their spaces and actually using this information to tie it back and identify mechanical equipment failures before they would typically be identified or found. This allowed a reduction in CO2 levels in conference rooms up to 67%, which is enormous when you think about the impact on cognitive performance. So that's a massive win. Salesforce is an example of a portfolio client that uses this data to optimize their filter changes and make sure that their buildings are ready and resilient for wildfires, so that, to Jen's earlier example, when there is an issue, you can tell people the space is safe and hold their landlord and facilities teams accountable for using a data-driven solution for filter changes. I mean, GSK has done some really, really cool things where they actually block out meeting rooms and book meeting rooms as occupied when the CO2 levels are too high, so that other people cannot use them until the ventilation kicks in and the CO2 levels are reduced. Okta is actively sharing their air quality data with occupants. So if you work in an Okta office, all of their offices, I believe, are measuring air quality, and you can see readings in real time. You can understand the performance of the building. They're being really active about sharing this and what they're doing. So these are just a few quick examples. The last slide before we jump into Q&A, I'll just kind of share. If you're thinking about kind of dipping your toes in the water and experimenting with sensors, this is typically what we'd suggest, which is start with a small project, start with a pilot. Take your smallest office, maybe that 4,000 square foot one, and put sensors in, run a technical evaluation, achieve your well certification, which previously may have been impossible, cost prohibitive for such a small location. Get it well certified. Understand how you can use this data, get some quick wins, and then from there start looking at larger buildings, and then ultimately portfolio. And as you go up, sort of scaling this out, more and more use cases are unlocked along the way, right? So it could be automating your ventilation and tying into your BMS at a large building scale. It could be, when you get to the portfolio scale, being able to benchmark every building, being able to use this in your annual ESG report, actually have quantitative metrics for the S in your ESG report, not just qualitative ones. Being able to look at all of your buildings across your portfolio and understand which ones are maybe most in need of capital improvements because their HVAC isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And so you're being able to better allocate resources and money to the right buildings to make sure that all of your employees, all of your occupants globally are able to experience good offices, and you don't just have your sort of one or two beautiful benchmark wall platinums and the rest a long tail of not so nice offices. So there's a lot that you can do as you go through this journey, unlocking more and more use cases and more value. With that, I think, Joe, I'll hand it back over to you. And I'm sorry I took up a couple minutes more than planned, but
No worries.
we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much to Jen and Liam. Some really eye-opening stuff. I love that spreadsheet, the cost comparison spreadsheet. I think that really brings things to life, and I hope it did for everyone on the call. We will get to Q&A, I promise. I know we're coming up on time, but I also promised a resource for you guys to help you support your WELL certification journey. So this is our guide, Achieve WELL certification and maximize points with continuous IAQ monitoring. So you'll see the QR code there on the left. Feel free to scan that directly, download the resource. You'll find a practical breakdown of how continuous monitoring ties into specific WELL features, points, and how it makes everything more efficient with the right solutions in place. So we will jump in. You know what? Let's leave this slide up, and then we'll just jump right into Q&A.
Joe, I saw one in there that was directed to me that I can answer, because I think Liam, although I could answer some of the other ones, I think they're probably going to be much more, I want to answer them, but I think they should probably fall to you. So somebody asked about the PIP and whether we were using the newly updated Q1 2025 PIP, and we are. I was very much involved with the changes made to the PV testing, because it was a lot of our clients that were struggling on that smaller size square footage in how we were even putting out RFPs, because we couldn't respond, because we didn't know how many tests we needed to do or samples for water, air, and it made it impossible to respond to RFPs. So while we're extremely excited that you can now, do an estimate based on square footage, what we have found is that the smaller projects, the 5,000, the 4,000, the 10,000, the 20,000 square foot projects, they still have those minimums that have not reached the economies of scale, even though there's a reduced sample quantity. Unfortunately, those small projects still have that same baseline as 100,000, of minimum. And that's where the sensors have been huge. But yes, for all of the analysis we've been doing, we've actually been using the Q1 2025 PIP.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Just going through Q&A. So this one was from earlier. This one's from Ken. I believe this is for Liam, which was closer to the beginning of the presentation when you were talking about SenseEdge parameters measured. When are CO, NO2, and O3 available? And if they are, when can we expect them?
Yeah, great question. Say reach out to us directly, and based on the project size, location, scope, can probably get a better answer. We do have these available right now on kind of a limited basis, and we have a lot of projects that are in line for these. So if you are looking for SenseEdge Go, which measures with second module measuring CO, NO2, and O3, definitely reach out to somebody. Let us know sort of what's coming down the pipeline so that we can help you out accordingly.
A diplomatic answer, get in touch.
And I know Sam is one of our partners' clients. Is there a lifespan for sensors? One of the things I didn't talk about, but I love, is that the recalibration is only 3 years. You don't need to do it every other year. But what I learned from a lot of people and other sensors is if there's an update, you often are having to just get a whole new sensor. And what I love about Kytera is it's also sustainable. And we have these, so I've tested them out. Like, there's just these little boxes, and I'm sure Liam would give you a much more technical answer, but you pop out the box and you can replace that box. So on the life, like how long do these last? That lifespan is going to be a lot longer than most sensors, just because you can continue to upgrade them without replacing the full unit, and that recalibration is every 3 years. But I'll let you answer the actual lifespan, and then Sam's other question about outdoor sensors, because I know we've been talking a lot about outdoor sensors ourselves, Liam, between us as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have much to add. Thank you, Jen. on the outdoor sensor, we do have an outdoor sensor that is available, and we absolutely recommend projects wherever possible to measure both indoors and outdoors. The extra value that you get from having a single outdoor data point, it absolutely pays for itself. The cost is incremental, is not enormous, but you can understand so much more about the actual performance of the building and be able to troubleshoot and diagnose specific issues if you're able to see in real time what's happening inside and outside of the walls. So if you're working on a project where there's the ability to install outdoors, because sometimes it can be tricky. A tall skyscraper in Manhattan, sometimes not the easiest to get outdoor readings for, but if you're able to, it's very useful.
Great. I'm going to lump these two questions in together because they're kind of on the same topic around building integration. So can the sensors connect to building automation systems to improve energy and ventilation? And how have you seen this used in the field?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one. So absolutely, there are integrations. I mean, just as an example, we work very closely with like Johnson Controls, JCI. There's direct integrations with Metasys, their BMS or OpenBlue. So, and as well as with many other vendors, and we use all the standard third-party open standards for making data available. So be it BACnet or MQTT, there's an API as well. So there's a lot of ways to integrate the data into your building. And then, yes, there is so much that you can do with this. And I believe there's a huge opportunity out there for projects to also look at this from the angle of using these sensors for demand control ventilation, which is a requirement in a lot of parts of the world, and not doubling up on more sensors than you need. So an air quality sensor that is able to measure temperature and humidity and CO2 and plug into your BMS, such as any of the sensors from Kytera, can actually replace a lot of the sensors that you might otherwise already be installing in the base building. And so that's, again, there's an opportunity for cost reduction there. What you can do with that data is obviously automate your ventilation to create more comfortable spaces, reduce energy on HVAC, but also make sure that when there are people in the space and when you do need to have healthy air, you're pumping in, you can pump in more fresh air, more outdoor air when there are people in the space and less when there are no people in the space, right? It sounds totally, totally logical, but very few buildings today are actually doing this to the level where I think they could. And this is absolutely possible with the technology today.
Awesome. I think we can get to two more questions relatively quickly. There's one here from Natalia, which is, do your sensors react or respond to an event indicated by the sensor? Is there a procedure or process provided to the occupants? So this is after sensors are installed. If there's an incident, how do people respond to that?
So this is where the importance of thinking of an IAQ solution or an environmental monitoring solution as a whole, I think, is really important. And it's sometimes easy to think, I'll just put a sensor on the wall and then everything will be good. I'll have data. But the reality that we've seen year after year is that people will install sensors on walls that don't necessarily have the software and the services to help interpret that data, and nobody knows what to do with it. And so it just sort of sits on the wall and collects data, and no one really does anything with it. And so that's why we have a really, really strong focus on making sure that the software can actually translate that raw data into something useful, and that you also have a customer success manager who's there to hold your hand, who is, by the way, a well AP, a reset AP, and so on, to actually hold your hand and make sure that that information gets translated into action. What does your facilities team need to do to improve your air? How does this impact your certification? How should you change your submission, based upon this? Some of this will be automation. Some of this will be policy changes. Sometimes it will be design issues in your HVAC or mechanical failures. I mean, I could talk about this for 20 minutes, but I'll stop there. There's so much value that can be extracted from these sensors, and we often say that for many sensors out there, or I'd say vendors kind of in the sensing space, their job ends when they put the sensor on the wall. That's kind of when they think, okay, well, I've made my sale, the sensor's on the wall, done. For us, it's really the other way around. When the sensor goes on the wall, that's when the hard work begins for Kytera, because we see it as our job to actually help create a healthier environment, not just to put a white box on a wall.
Awesome. I know we're at time. If everyone can spare 1 or 2 more minutes, I think we can get to this last question. Oh, Jen, I see you answered it already.
I answered that one so you wouldn't get missed. Yeah.
But maybe it would benefit everyone to hear for a project that's used performance testing in the past, looking to change or switch over to sensors. What's the best kind of way forward?
Yeah, anytime in the process works. Honestly, we've switched, midway through. Like we've been in design and construction, we've been done and ready to do testing. We've done partial testing and switched, and we've done it after they've done testing already in year one, even just as a solution, so that anything that they failed, they don't have to retest. They're now using sensors for that. Essentially as the curative action to get us more data. So there is not a bad time to switch and do that analysis. It's really compelling. It'll show you what that looks like.
Amazing. All right. So with that said, we're going to wrap things up, everyone. Thank you.
You had one more from Jonathan. He had his hand up the whole time, so I don't want to miss it. I'm not the person to answer this because I want to, but Liam, he's asking, do we see emerging tech for water, sound, or light? I will be honest, I don't see water coming soon, but sound or light. Do you have any thoughts on that, Liam?
Yeah, we'll have to see where the technology evolves. I think there's some challenges in all this stuff, but again, sensor technology has evolved very rapidly. I think we'll continue to see it evolving. So I think it's a little hard to say with any certainty right now. I mean, the future I see is where everything in the building is measured automatically in real time, 24/7. We just have to see what are the technical hurdles, along the way and slowly get over them.
Amazing. All right, now we will wrap things up. We hope everyone found the session valuable and informative in some way. If you'd like to continue the conversation, Liam, maybe if you want to skip ahead 2 slides, I believe. Or if we couldn't get to your questions or more come up, feel free to connect with Jen or Liam on LinkedIn. You can see their handles there on the right. I'm sure they'd love to connect. And then you can also visit our website or reach out to our team with the links on the left if any product or project related questions come up. So once again, thank you to Jen and Liam. Really insightful session. Love the conversation, and to all of you for joining. And we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.